Hello and welcome to the Oregon Business Matters podcast, brought to you by Oregon Business and Industry, where we focus on insights, issues, and initiatives that impact Oregonians' shared prosperity and the state's economic health. I'm Angela Wilhelms, President and CEO of OBI and your host for Oregon Business Matters. Today I'll be talking with the two highest-ranking Republicans in the Oregon Legislature, House Republican leader Christine Drazan and Senate Republican leader Daniel Bonham. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to be here.
So I'll do these introductions alphabetically, even though I am partial to the House. So we'll save the best for last. Is that a proper chamber statement? So Senator Bonham represents District 26, which includes rural Clackamas County and parts of Wasco, Hood River, and Multnomah counties. Senator Bonham began his legislative career in the House in 2017 by appointment, replacing a representative who had resigned, and then ultimately rose to become Deputy House Minority Leader from 2019 to 2022, when you then made the jump and were elected to the state Senate, and you became Senate Minority Leader in April 2024. Representative Drazan represents half of Senator Bonham's district. Her House District 51 includes a large part of Clackamas County, including the cities of Beaver Creek, Canby, Estacada, and Sandy. She was elected to the House for the first time in 2018 and rose to become the House Minority Leader the next year. She was reelected in 2020, but stepped down from the House in 2022 to run for governor, and ultimately decided to come back to the House in 2024 and resumed the role of Minority Leader. So we'll unpack that a little bit, if you don't mind. But again, thank you both for being here. And with that, I'll launch right into some questions. So first, the sort of standard question, and maybe since we just did those introductions, we can start with you, Representative Drazan. Why are you guys serving in the legislature? What drew you to run, particularly for these positions at this moment?
I believe that there is not an issue that affects our lives here in the state of Oregon that isn't discussed inside the state capitol. And so it feels like a place that you can really understand what's going on in our state at a deeper level, and also try to really stand up for the people that are not being heard, that don't always, have power. And so that's why I'm here. I can remember some of my very first town hall style, panel meetings when I ran the very first time. And that's a question that you always get. Why are you doing this? Like, why are you running? Because most people think politics is just such a strange path. Why would anybody want to do that? And my answer has always been the same all these years later. I just want to make a difference. It's not... Some people run because they have a background in an issue, or they have a personal story. Something happened in their lives that means now they've got to take action. And that's a very valid reason to pivot and engage like this. But I just have it in me I just want to be a part of this in a way that makes life better for somebody.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I felt like I was on the bench watching a game, and I wanted in, and I wanted to have a chance to have the ball and kind of help drive the outcome as opposed to just watching it happen. And as a small business owner and just a citizen of Oregon, I felt like a lot of things were happening to me. And I thought, well, holy cow, wouldn't it be nice to actually stand up and have a voice and be part of it? And quite frankly, I didn't know anybody that was in the legislature. Like, it wasn't passing judgment on the legislature, but as I looked at the legislature writ large, owning a very small business, a family-sized business, I didn't see anybody that looked like me, and I thought maybe I could offer some perspective, some different viewpoint that maybe wasn't being considered. That was a big part of it.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to that too. I mean, this is the Oregon Business Matters podcast after all, so I do want to come back to that. But you're now both caucus leaders, and a lot of people don't know what that means necessarily, and it can mean very different things to different people. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the role is and what you've enjoyed most about the role and what's maybe surprised you the most about the role.
We had some folks come over last night for dinner. It was kind of fun to have a group of random legislators, lobbyists, and interested parties, staff around the building that came over. And at one point I overheard Kate Lieber talking to my wife, and she said, "Oh my gosh, Senate Minority Leader, Jess, you know that's the worst job in the building, right? And so, you know,
it is.
Who wouldn't want to have this job? It's interesting, right? Like being the caucus leader in a super minority, representing the minority, 12 leaders in their own right that want to come and, like I articulated, be a part of driving a better outcome for the state of Oregon, and feeling in a position to not be able to control that destiny. And so, you know, trying to help people achieve cooperatively while also managing their expectations and keeping them on the team. Because an individual in a caucus can go affect an outcome for themselves. And yet we have a global vision of trying to project a different potential future outside of the building, showcasing to voters that this doesn't have to be the path forever. There is a different course we could course correct, and we only get to put that argument forward and articulate that to people if we're allowed to by our caucus. And so it's constantly trying to keep 11 other members with me marching down the same path. And again, most of it is, you know, not a single person's vision. It's just collectively, okay, where do the 12 of us want to be and how do we get there? And then reminding people, hey, remember you said this is what we were trying to accomplish. Stay here, stay part of the team. And it's a great honor to have the caucus trust you with that. And at the same time, then it's a tremendous obligation for the members to stay committed to that global goal.
So from my perspective, if I'm talking to students, I sometimes put it in family terms because that seems very approachable. And I say, okay, the Speaker of the House is like the parent. They have actual authority. They can drop the hammer, you know. But the caucus leader, that's kind of like the oldest sibling, where you need to have some collaboration. And you can certainly make their lives miserable, but also they can make your life miserable. And so that's, you know, how I describe it to people that have no idea what that language is. But as far as the day-to-day goes, I would say that there's also some features to this job where you are, where you're managing this kind of asset, you know, which is all of these people that bring something unique to their service. As caucus leader, I try to look at that and I kind of try to say, what do they bring to our work together and how can I leverage that asset? And how can I collectively make more of us as a unified group than any of us could be alone? And so, you know, I'm trying to leverage that, and I'm trying to build something. And some days I'm successful at that, and some days, you know, not so much. But this process, everybody in elected office in the legislature, they're here because they care, and they're here because, like me, there's something they want to get done. And it might not always align with what I want to get done. Sometimes it's oppositional. Sometimes it's oppositional to our whole caucus as a group. But I can certainly say that if you're looking for it, you can find something to work with there. And I view my job as the Republican leader as one that is constantly looking for what can I do with this? What can I make of this? How can I help this grow? How can I help this build? How can I make gains? All the time.
I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and I think about your sibling reference and being in a super minority. I'm not sure that being leader of a minority caucus isn't like being the youngest of the kids.
Fair.
You could probably drag that analogy out pretty far if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm the youngest among my siblings, so yes, I could feel that too.
Yeah. So let's jump to the actual session. As we're talking, we're nearing the final weeks of the legislative session in 2025, and let's just first get your observations about how the session's gone so far, and also what your hopes are for the end of the session.
So I hope we don't raise costs on Oregonians. I hope we don't make the business environment worse. I hope that we don't complicate our classroom settings so that there's more mandates there and kids can't come out of the learning losses that they experienced in COVID. I hope, it's my low bar for this session right now, is I hope we do no harm. And I can't say that I am overly confident that that will be the outcome of this session. When I'm looking at our goals as a caucus and what I want, kind of affirmatively and from that kind of positive visionary perspective, House Republicans have engaged in this session in a way that has been collaborative, that has been bipartisan, and we have advanced issues that we really care deeply about, repealing the wildfire maps, and today we had conversations about how to fund wildfire mitigation and how to address that challenge across our state, recognizing it's a challenge for our entire state, not just extreme rural parts of Oregon. And that's just one example of many of these issues where we have identified ways to work together. But when it comes to those core questions, are we really fixing what's broken in our state? Are we really stopping the doom loop? I want that. I really want that. And there's still time in this session for us to kind of put the brakes on some of the things that I think will make that worse. So there's still time, but that is kind of what I'm looking to. That's what I'm listening for and paying attention to.
Senator?
At the risk of being too political, so far this session has been, how many favors can we do for our labor union friends? That has been the theme of this session so far. So have there been bipartisan bills? There's been a lot. There's been a lot of bills. I saw the House Democrats celebrating, 90% of bills have passed with bipartisan support. Well, how many have passed despite bipartisan opposition? It's easy to talk about the simple fixes, the technical fixes that we pass relatively unanimously, the minor things that don't really, affect your mom or your neighbor. That's my threshold. Am I going to hear about this from my mom, or my neighbor's going to come storm my front door? When I go home, most people, aren't aware of 90% of what we do. And the 90% of what they're not aware of are the things that we pass easily in a bipartisan way. The 10% that they do hear about, that they care about, those are the things that are divisive, and they've been divisive. Relatively speaking, this session has been boring so far. There's not been anything that my mom and my neighbors are storming my front. There have been things that they reach out and they say, why are you giving unemployment benefit to people that are on strike? Didn't they choose to go on strike? Like, this is an affront to the entire system. Like, there have been things that people say, that's wrong. Why are you guys doing that? But I don't know what's coming yet. And I don't know that the majority party knows either. Like, it feels relatively like we're adrift. We're out at sea. We're waiting for the wind to change or the sea to shift currents, and that's where we're going to go. So I kind of have been waiting, and I think the moment that we're waiting for right now seems to be the May forecast that's going to tell us how much money we have, and that will dictate how we get done with this building or with this process and get out of the building.
I would double down on that a little bit, and I would characterize the vast majority of what's actually come out of committee as being, with rare exceptions, pretty inconsequential. And we have big issues in our state right now. And we are doing this marginal stuff. And it's 90% bipartisan because it just doesn't matter enough to anybody for us to say, stop it. And we've heard so many complaints about all these bills that have dropped in this session. Yeah. And you guys are moving out some really, really unimportant stuff. Like, you don't have to spend time on the vast majority of what we're voting on the floor. And that has been one of the big challenges of this session, is the stuff that is waiting in the wings is pretty bad, but it hasn't all come forward yet.
Yeah. So just for the sake of conversation, if you guys were majority leaders instead of the minority leaders, what's the first thing you would work on?
The first thing I would declare that we're open for business. I mean, I would just declare to the world, Oregon wants you here.
Well, thank you.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the first thing, right? How do we attract business? First thing first, right? Land use is the second one we have to address. Like, it is the number one thing that we're not talking about in housing. We've got about 15 housing bills that the governor is going to tell you are important. And I don't disagree. They are doing...
I would.
But the things that we're doing, there are some things that are important, right? There are timing things. We're spurring the clock on a few things. They're not things that we should not do, but they're not the top of the list. They're not the highest priority. We're doing things that are on a list, but the number one thing we need to do is add more land to the supply so that we can grow. And then third is fund law enforcement. We consistently underfund, undersupply statewide law enforcement, and it's been a trend since I've been here, the 8 years I've been here now, that our state's been going in the wrong direction with support of law enforcement and funding of law enforcement, whether it be statewide or at the local level. And if you're not a nation or a state or a country of laws, then what are you?
So I would say the first thing we would do is try to figure out why we're not the presiding officers.
Okay, very fair question. Very fair.
What happened?
We got to the majority.
We
got to the majority, but stalled out. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Very fair. Sorry. I should know better. As somebody who worked in this building, I should know better.
No, but I would say that for us, when you walk into our office here on the third floor, in the House Republican office here, on our doors, we have glass doors, double doors that come into our office. And we have these, the focus of our caucus this session. And we would lower taxes. We would affirmatively lower the cost of living for Oregonians. Not just say do no harm, but make progress. We had legislation to fix the estate tax. We had legislation to address challenges around property taxes and to lower income taxes. So we would do that. We would fix homelessness. And when I say fix homelessness, we would address it in a way that wasn't just hand someone a key for a tiny house, but instead recognize that it is possible to get to functional zero. And I had, a recent meeting with the mayor of Portland and was really encouraged with his very structured affirmative approach to homelessness. You have a place to go during the day, you have a place to go at night, and oh, by the way, you're here for 90 days and we're going to get you into programs and we're going to do workforce development for you. And this is not your permanent reality. And so, when we talk about lowering the cost of living, addressing homelessness, quality of life issues, and then certainly reprioritizing the family and returning control to families for education, choice in education, like those kind of basic pillars about what are our values as House Republicans. We believe in business. We believe that this should be a place that you can afford to live, where you can choose to start a business and grow it, where your kids are going to get a great education and you're going to be safe, and that these societal ills that we have enabled for far too long, that we're not going to let them continue to overwhelm us, that it is possible to address those challenges, and we have vision to get that done.
Yeah. Thank you. So you guys have talked about the business community, and Senator Bonham, you yourself have owned a small business and have that experience. Does it really matter when business owners engage in the process? I mean, sometimes I think to observers, it can feel like outcomes are predetermined and business owners are busy doing the thing we want them to do, which is run their business and generate economic activity. Yeah. So talk a little bit about if it matters and if so, how they can engage.
Well, I think the answer sucks, and that is that it depends. And I can't tell you when it will matter and when it won't. Sometimes it really is predetermined, and coming and engaging will be an absolute waste of your time, and you won't be able to move the needle because someone's already decided. And then there are other times when you come and you offer your perspective, and all of a sudden someone says, oh my God, I had never thought about that. I didn't realize that was going to be something that would be an outcome from this idea that I thought would never lead to that. And that moment is so precious when you achieve enlightenment in this building where you change an outcome. And so you have to engage, because you don't know whether or not this is a predetermined outcome or whether or not your perspective will matter. And so I do think engagement is the only key to stopping some nonsense. And it's not from those of us who are in the building. I think, unfortunately, my experience right now is the majority party relies so heavily on their special interest groups to tell them what the agenda is. The amount of bills that have a sponsor's name on them For example, today in committee, the trial attorneys came and said, "This is our bill, by the way." Oh, thankfully we had some disclosure. Okay, now I know who we're talking to. I'm not actually talking to the representative that just presented. They don't know this concept. They just were willing to put their name on it. But now I get to talk to the trial attorneys who brought it forward. So in those moments where you actually get to have a sincere, honest conversation, having someone here with expertise and competence to be able to articulate something that is clearly not just me repeating their talking point, but that they're showcasing that personal impact of their lives, I think it's super important. And again, I can't tell you when it matters and when it doesn't, but when you watch it happen, when all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and somebody who is only representing a special interest all of a sudden hears from somebody on the ground that will be impacted, and they stop and they say, well, wait a second, no one told me this. That's more than what we can do a lot of times, unfortunately, is that person that shows up from the community really can move the needle. So we need as many people to engage as possible here in person, writing testimony. If they can make the meeting in a member's office, more so than just coming testifying before a bill, if they can go make the rounds and visit the 5 people in the Senate, 9 people in the House that are on the committee, that is what can absolutely move the needle. When you get to have that one-on-one time where they see the whites of your eyes and you get to say, this is what it means to me and this is why I'm here, and I took a day off of work and I spent the fuel to get here. We need a lot more of that.
Yeah, thank you. Anything to add on that, Representative?
It was pretty thorough, but I would say that when it comes to the process, a lot of this happens well before the legislative session starts, and engaging outside of the pressure cooker of a legislative session is really pays dividends. And certainly engaging with your association, your professional organizations, and ensuring that your perspective is being advanced through their agenda and through their work. I think that there's value there. But I'm just going to also be political for just a second and acknowledge we need businesses to pay attention and care about who's running for office and who gets elected. I mean, too often there's these assumptions, that was such a nice guy, or gosh, I really enjoyed getting to know her over a glass of wine at a business meeting or reception or something. I really feel like they heard me. And then no, they vote against you perpetually. They are legitimately friendly, but structurally anti-business. And so I would say, like, know your people, trust your associations to know the folks, and be willing to engage, be willing to show up at fundraising events, be willing to get to know people personally, make your pitch before session starts, make it clear how you're affected broadly by the work of this building, what your broad priorities are, and then you will have had the relationship, and then when you show up in their office, it's like, hey, it's so great to see you again. And I just, that really is next level for how effective you can be.
Yeah, thank you. That's good advice. So I've already said this multiple times on the podcast. We could talk all day, but I have promised our listeners a relatively short form podcast.
I'm sure they're disappointed.
But there's nothing to prevent us from having part 2. Each episode needs to be relatively short. So we're going to have to bring it to a close. But before we do, are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap it up?
So the one question that you put on the list that I was curious how Representative Drazan would answer is, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, gee. A question of the carrier? Is that what we're doing right now?
Yeah, I don't know how to apply Robert's rules to this situation.
Well, I saw that question. I thought, quite frankly, for me, it's all of it.
Yeah.
It all keeps me up on any given day. And it's the campaigns, it's the in the building, it's how do we get out of the building. What would I do if I were in charge?
Yeah. I would, from what keeps me up at night is, we have a position right now where we're representing the voices of our caucus, and we're also representing the voices of Oregonians that don't stand a chance to overcome these numbers. And I want to do right by all of it. So for me, if I'm, wide awake at 3 a.m., it's because there's something that I am not yet certain that I'm doing absolutely everything in my power to change that outcome, because that's the job. Make a difference. Change how the story ends. And sometimes you can't see around the corner yourself about, all on your own. And you need mentors, and you need people that understand this place, understand this process, and you need relationships to make sure that your decisions and your choices that you're moving ahead with are actually the best for the process and the people, both of those things. And that's what keeps me up at night.
Well, my final comment is I'm so thankful that Christine Drazan came back to the House. I question why she wanted to be leader again. But again, it's been nice for me to have someone that I have a relationship with from being her deputy when we were both in the House when she was leader, and now get to work in hand in conjunction trying to figure this out. It's been a tremendous honor for me to get to work with you, and I'm so glad that it's you. And come hell or high water, I will choose you to go to battle any day.
I feel the exact same. And I do think that is the magic of this session with all the things that we talk about, is that it's the people. And this is a unique, really extraordinary opportunity to work with somebody I really admire and respect, and just a dear friend. You don't always get that. You might align on policies, you might align on political goals, but just being able to work with somebody that you really trust and really respect and admire is pretty rare. So in that way, this has been a pretty special session.
Well, that is a fabulous way to end the conversation. Thank you both, Senator Daniel Bonham and Representative Christine Drazan, for joining us. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. The Oregon Business Matters podcast is a production of Oregon Business and Industry, and our episodes can be found on all the top podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple. For more information about OBI, visit OregonBusinessIndustry.com. Thank you for listening.